All right, yeah, I saw some. Well, not the Jesus Black thing being racist, but this is some of the most racist stuff I've ever seen, and it's just fine. No one cares about it. But this is one of my favorite YouTube channels. This fella, Jay Witt. Um, but yeah, I'll link the original video. But the original video is about Umar Johnson, which was going to come up in this. But this is more about what he says, that Jesus is black and black skin makes you better, essentially. But yeah, let's go.
Widely known that Jesus was born in a cave in Ethiopia.
I beg your pardon?
Jesus is black. Every coin and statue of Christ prior to the rise of white supremacy has him as black. The oldest painting of Jesus, which I think is in the Cairo Museum, I have a picture of it, a replica of it. He's black, and all 12 of the disciples is black. Y'all saw the president of Russia, Putin. He went down into the Vatican, not the Vatican, but the cathedral in Russia, and showed you all the black images of Christ in the disciples. Remember now, the
There's some days when
I'll skip I'll put his video in if you want to go and see what he has to say. But I have my own thoughts on this. But hold on, we'll finish his clip. Let him get out everything he wants to say. Hold on 2 seconds. Hold on.
but let's let him finish up.
word Christ, Christos, which is a word that speaks of the soul that rises within. Christ is a title. In ancient African culture, you could not be called a Christ if your son was not black, if your skin was not black.
That's racist!
Because the melanin, the chemical, not color, it's power, it's energy. The melanin is what gives you the ability to access higher levels of spiritual consciousness in the first place. So you had to be dark to be a Christ, because the darker your skin, the greater your spiritual propensity to reach higher levels of spiritual reality. You tap into other dimensions based on the amount of melanin in your body.
What in the world? What did we...
I mean, that last bit's crazy because it's like, well, you are not evidence of that, Umar Johnson. You aren't evidence. In fact, if that's the case and black people are, you should go and hide somewhere, because you obviously ain't got that power. But the whole Jesus is black thing, Jesus isn't black, nor was he white. He come from the Middle East. He's Arab, basically. He's Arab looking. That's what he would have looked like. He was an Arab. But the reason why, now the Ethiopian, if Jesus was born in an Ethiopian cage and cave and he's Ethiopian, then why doesn't the Bible come from Ethiopia? It doesn't come from there. It's one of the earliest Bibles. It's also not selective. They just took every book that people thought was biblical. But he didn't come from Africa. But the reason, if you go into the history of Christianity, Christianity's always been meant to be understood easily by the person reading it. It's meant to be for the poor person. It's meant to be for the farmer. What point, like, say if you was going to Africa, of course you're going to make Jesus black, because most of the people, in fact all the people around that time, would have never seen anybody that didn't look like them. Same as Europe. The reason Jesus is portrayed in Europe as white is because you're talking to, say, French, German, English, Scottish, Welsh, whatever, farmers. They weren't holidaying in the Caribbean. There was no great migration like then. Do you know what I mean? Most of these people would have really only seen their family. Do you know what I mean? It's like, of course you're going. Why would you depict a black person to English farmers when they have no idea? Because then you've got to have a whole nother conversation to explain why this guy's black, and that somewhere on another part already you've lost them. somewhere in another part of the world, far, far away, where you have not got any concept of, because you probably don't even know what the sea is, because you live inland and you've never gone that far out that you don't even know there's a sea. Do you know what I mean? These are primitive people, basically. Of course, you're going to put it the same color as Africans. Of course, is the Jesus is depicted black, and that he wants some of the earliest paintings would be, because it's Ethiopian. However, if you go to what the actual scripture is and where he was and what people are from there, he's not black, he's an Arab. He's not white either. But yeah, obviously that, do you know what I mean? When you're talking about who it's aimed at, and then the whole black skin, uh, like that whole thing is crazy. The word Christ in Africa means black or whatever he said. You couldn't be called, yeah. It's kind of, he's playing off of a real thing, off of a real conspiracy, and turning it into that Jesus was black. Also, it wouldn't matter if Jesus was black. Jesus' skin color is actually irrelevant. The story is what's important. Whatever color he was is absolutely irrelevant. But he's playing off of the like there's a conspiracy that the rabbi Jesus was a rabbi. That's another thing. Why would he be a Jew if he come from Africa? Jesus was a Jew. He's talking Jewish scriptures. He's not talking any African things. He's not talking any European, like Norse mythology. He's not talking of Thor and all these guys. He's talking of Jewish things. He's a Jew. But yeah, there is a thing where it says, that the playing on the Christ means you must be black. He's playing on if you're a rab, because there's a thing that Jesus' bloodline, the bloodline of Christ, and that Jesus and Mary Magdalene was in a relationship, and or that Jesus had children, because Jesus was a rabbi, and in them days you couldn't be a rabbi without having kids, or without being a man, and the way they thought you was a man is if you had kids, which means that for Jesus to become a rabbi, he would have had to have children. You're playing off that same thing, but the whole Christ, that's not what Christ means. Right? Christ doesn't mean black skin. It's like, no, it don't mean that. But yeah. And then this next one is the most racist thing I've ever seen, to follow it up, from Nick Cannon. I can't believe how people say Nick Fuentes is racist, but someone like Nick Cannon,
person that has the lack of pigment, the lack of melanin, that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes with soul, that we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters. That's the melanin that connects us. So the people that don't have it have.
I love that Nick Cannon thinks soul brothers comes from, it's like that's like literally comes from a specific time period in history, from a music. Look, to be honest, most fashion things and things come from music.
Are a little, and I'm gonna say this carefully, are a little less, and where the term.
Go back so you hear that. If you haven't got the black skin, you are a little less.
I'm gonna say this carefully, are a little less, and where.
Hold on.
With soul, that we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters. That's the melanin that connects us. So the people that don't have it are a little, and I'm gonna say this carefully, are a little less. And where the term actually comes from, because I'm bringing it all the way back around to Minister Farrakhan, to where they may not have the compassion, or the when they were sent to the mountains of Caucasus, when they didn't have the power of the sun, that the sun then started to deteriorate them. So then they're acting out of fear. They're acting out of low self-esteem. They're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil. The only way they have to rob, steal, rape, kill, and
Fight or
pillage
flight, okay.
in order to survive.
Exactly.
So then these people who didn't have what we had, and when I say we, I speak of the melanated people.
Right.
They had to be savages. They had to be barbaric. Because they're in these Nordic mountains. They're in these rough, torrential environments. So they're acting as animals.
Right.
So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages.
That is some wild work.
Yeah, what a pathetic thing to do is to say, oh, you call us savages, so I'm going to do some crazy thing. And here's the thing, people call Nick Fuentes racist when Nick Fuentes says black or African people aren't as capable as any other race through evidence. When we got there, there was nothing. Like, you can say white supremacy and white colonization ruined all the greatness that Africa had. It's like, well, actually, if you look, when we got there, there was nothing. And people say history is written by the victor. No, history is written by the literate. There isn't an African written language. What there is an old one, but no one knows it. Like, is it Geishan or something like that? Yeah, something like that. I'm sure it begins with a G. But yeah, there's no African written language. The wells, the wells that say Mr. Beast or someone goes over and builds for them, within a few months they don't work anymore. They're unusable. Like, it's like Nick Fuentes is basing his thing that Africa isn't as capable as anywhere else on the planet, and he says himself, he's like, it's not something I'm happy about. It's a truth. It's an uncomfortable truth that people don't want to admit. But then this guy that's racist to say there's no evidence of African development in anywhere. Like, there's no evidence of this superior civilization, not even today. And you say colonization, well, Africa's owned itself, like the continent's been its own thing for years. You say people still intervene. It's like people intervene in everybody's countries and try and mess around. It's what countries do. It doesn't mean that you collapse the whole country around it. But yeah, his whole thing, Nick Cannon's whole thing, was just skin color. Just skin color. That white people aren't as caring, compassionate, and we're savages because of our white skin. Not because of any historical, and he says because they lived in the Nordic mountains. He's describing Vikings. That was a very small group of white people that, conquered. But that isn't the mountains that the Vikings come from, the Norwegian mountains and Denmark and all these places. In a way, he's right. They were rougher people than say here, because here it isn't like that. Like, we don't have crazy mountains. We have good seasons. We can grow food. We're a small country. We can fish. We're an island. Like, it's self-sustainable island. It's like there was, we was the ones getting invaded. But it's like, you can't just take Vikings. And Vikings is they're not a great deal of white history either. They're a big deal in terms of what they did. But he won't talk to you about how, say, like, people like the Vikings, who he's describing, was coming here to England, kidnapping white people and selling them to the Arabs and then on to the Africans, because white slaves was seen as white slaves, like it was like an exotic thing to him, because like I said at the beginning, they'd never seen it. Right? I remember a Christian guy saying that he who used to come to our school, that when he went to Africa to do Christian missionary work and charity work or whatever, he's like, the villagers, he's like, you go and have a shower and the villagers come in and look. And he's like, and I remember it, he told us as a kid, he's like, they're all looking under the thing. And then the reason why they're looking under the thing is because it's like they want to see if you're white all over, because they can't believe it. They'd never seen it. And it's the same, it would have been the same It's why you couldn't have depicted Jesus as black in Europe, because no one had seen a black person before. It's obvious why Jesus is black in Africa, white in Europe, and what he actually was, an Arab in the Middle East. Hello, baby girl. Um, but yeah, I find it crazy that they can say Nick Fuentes is a white supremacist and thinks white skin makes you better when his issue with Africa is completely taken from fact-based evidence, from history. There's, do you know what I mean? That there's no buildings above a first floor that hasn't been built by them or built for them, I should say. And the other thing is the whole compassionate. Well, then why do Africans come here and America and we don't go there? Why in Nigeria is there a Christian genocide happening where literally people are being executed for being Christian in Nigeria? No one wants to talk about it. No one's, because it doesn't. And the other thing is because it's Muslim. You, like, people think white supremacy is the reason why Jesus is Europe. Nah, the reason why Jesus is seen to be from Europe is because it's the only continent that didn't fall to the Islamic conquest. Everywhere else did. Everywhere else did. Other than India. And India only didn't because of us. Because it fell to us instead. Which, again, not great, but a lot better than the Islam. And that's why in our country we have Indian, Sikh and Hindu. They hate Muslims. And they hate specifically Pakistani Muslims. Because, yeah. Another thing where Israel gets criticized constantly. They went in there, took over a country that isn't theirs, took land that's not theirs. But no, at exactly the same time, Pakistan, like the Muslims was given a country too. Pakistan. India had to give up part of their country to make Pakistan. No one talks about that. No one talks about all the horrendous shit Pakistani Muslims have done. Even in our country, they will say Asian grooming gangs. If they mention race at all with the grooming gangs, they'll say Asian. And Asian people are sick of it. It ain't Indian grooming gangs. They ain't Chinese. They ain't Japanese. They ain't any Asian place you want to pick. They're Pakistani Muslims. But yeah, it made me like. I mean, like I say, it actually, like, he's so wrong, and you're missing out, like everybody does, Islam's influence around. Well, after Muhammad died, the few centuries after Muhammad died, Islam conquered the world, and European conquest was a reaction to that. That Islam conquered all the way down to France until they got beat back, and then that's where the Crusades. Like, people think Christian and Muslims met in like 1050 or whatever, whenever the first Crusade was. But it's been for centuries Muslim. Like, look up Armenia. It was called the city of 1,000 churches, or the country of 1,000 churches. Armenia, Islam genocided them in a real sense, not like Israel versus Gaza. Like, they genocided them in a real sense. There is no more Armenians. There is none, but it was a Christian thing until Islam, and then basically Europe retaliated. Christendom finally stood up to Islam, won in the end. Well, not really, because Middle East is still Muslim. Africa, lots of places Muslim, like they're doing genocide in Africa now. The whole Europe conquering the world was actually in retaliation, but now it gets painted as we was always the aggressor, that everybody was living kumbaya until evil white Christians come along with their evil white Christian God, and butchered everybody, but the history just isn't like that. It is if you start your history from whenever the first crusade was. I'm sure it's 1050. I could be wrong though, it might be earlier. But that's where they think that, oh, that's where Christians started conquering the world. It's like, no, Islam had been conquering the world for centuries, killing Christians, killing Jews, killing anybody that wasn't Muslim, burning churches, burning, and in the end, Europe retaliated. And then now it's like, you were the bad guys. You were the bad guys. It's like, well, yeah. But it's funny. White people are the savages because of their skin, because of their skin deficiency and their inability to get sun. It's like, the cope is unreal. The cope is unreal. It's like, do you know why white people don't sit round saying we're the superior race all the time? It's because we know we're not. And it ain't black people either. The Asians kick our ass. Black and white. The Asians are the superior people, to be honest. Not white, not black. In fact, if you look at most Western countries, white and black are fighting for the bottom, really. Who doesn't want to be the bottom? Because Asians kick our ass. But yeah. Let me know your thoughts, sweet.